Yeah, I will do it in English because we might have some people from the French-speaking part of our country or Luxembourg. Welcome everybody to this webinar. So you all know we are a tech community. We are an exclusive community at Infinigate, all WatchGuard specialists. And today we have a special topic around WatchGuard API. So we all know our fantastic platform, WatchGuard Cloud, and there are a few APIs built around this platform that could be very useful for you in your day-to-day operations. And that's why we focus on this topic today. I invited Walter for this topic because he knows both WatchGuard very well, and he has a lot of developer skills, and so he likes APIs. That's really his cup of tea. So yeah, for the people who are not familiar with APIs, and maybe it's going to be a little bit hocus pocus, but it's important that you get the idea what can you do with the API, and maybe somebody else in your organization can benefit from it. So you can explain him what to do with those APIs. So if you have questions, put them in the chat and we'll try to answer them. Yeah, Walter, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar session about the WatchGuard API. My name is Walter van Bellegem, and I'm your host. I'll be doing presentations of the what's and the whys, and in between, I will supplement that by some demos, practical stuff, so the house. But needless to say, it will be a lot of information coming your way today. With that said, let's dive into it. The topics I will be covering today is a bit of review. For those that already know what an API is, it will be boring, but what exactly is an API? Where can you use the WatchGuard API for? Where can you find some resources and documentation? I'll be demoing the API with Postman later on that in the rest of the session. I will show you how to integrate the API in a programming language. My programming language of choice will be C#, and I will do an example, a practical example in Grafana, which is a dashboard application. So what exactly is an API? Definition is an application programming interface. Basically, it's a set of functions and procedures allowing the creation of applications that access data or features of an operating system or any other service or application that you might have that runs on data. There are two most known versions or flavors of this. One is called REST and the other one is called SOAP. More on that on the next slide. Basically, what you do when you have, I don't know if you see my cursor here, but what you do is now you have a browser and you type in information or a URL with some parameters behind it. That's a request that you do to an API, and a server will respond with, in your case, if you are surfing a web page, a simple web page, but if you're doing this with an API, you will get the raw data. That data looks a bit like this. In the case of REST, REST API works with JSON, so you get a JSON structured array. So it's basically, sorry for that. Basically, the name of the field and the value in an array where it's SOAP API, it uses XML. For some people like XML more than JSON. In my case, it's I'm totally in love with REST API. But basically, it's also the name of the file, um, a section, and then field names with field values. So it's kind of equivalent. WatchGuard API uses REST, so we will be covering JSON a lot. What is the purpose of this? So you can pull this raw data out of any system that provides for an API, so it's not applicable to WatchGuard alone. And then you can use that data, parse it, maybe change it, and use it in your application at your convenience. What are some of the use cases of the WatchGuard API? First, you can integrate data from WatchGuard Cloud, so endpoint, threads, accounts, provisioning, allocation and unallocation into your own systems. So you can use that to synchronize account information, for example, removing or adding subscribers into another account, which we will show. Get a list of how many endpoints, information about the endpoint, what license is attributed, etc., etc. Get details about a thread, and for example, also reporting if you like other reports than those that you can pull from WatchGuard Cloud. You can use it to automate tasks in general. So for creating or updating or deleting operators in an account, you have access to creating summaries of allocations, be that outpoint, endpoint, fireboxes, access points. I'll show you that in Postman. Reporting threads, for example, you can pull threads out of WatchGuard API, and then if you like alerts for level 8 or 9 threads and send an email by that or an SMS, you can do that. Or practical, create a ticket in your own support system to follow up. Basically, it's data synchronization between two systems. Or you can use it to execute tasks and save time. So isolate multiple devices using the endpoint API, block some sites entirely, block site IP, or even use the authentication API to send a push to authenticate into your own applications or website. Where can I find this information? Well, there's one URL to rule them all. It is mentioned in the slides. I will not pronounce it, but it's on WatchGuard. It's a nicely documented API documentation. You can also find the YAML resources. What is a YAML resource? It is a file that contains the API specification for you to use in, for example, an application as Postman. We will be covering that. An example of that is the accounting API or the accounts API. It says a version. You can view the version history, but also download the API specification on that URL for any API of WatchGuard. As already stated, the accounts API is a RESTful API, so it's not XML, it's JSON. What are the steps to take to use the API of WatchGuard? Is first of all, you need to authenticate. Very recently, there is an addition being made to that process. So in this case, I have a slide with 3 steps. So authenticate, get, and you have your result, or authenticate, post, and you have your result if you need to change information on WatchGuard Cloud. But recently, I should have added a second step called authorization. in which you can ask for an audience parameter using a URL, and then use your API access to do the same actions on a subscriber or delegated account in WatchGuard Cloud. I'll not be covering that today in my demos, but just remember that anything you can do with the APIs, you can do on a subscriber or a delegated account. So step one, how do you authenticate? You need to know that you have to pull some data from WatchGuard Cloud and first enable the WatchGuard API. How do you do that? You go to WatchGuard Cloud Administration in your account and then enable managed access. When you enable managed access, it will ask you for 2 passwords, which I obfuscated here. So you need the read-write username and the read-write password, and also the read-only username and a read-only password. Be advised, when you set those passwords, there is no way to see them afterwards. So please store them in a safe location. There is a way to change your passwords if you did not store them. In that case, you would need to remind that you change all your programming languages and code that you've written before. So how is authentication done? You need to read-write password. This is a screenshot of Postman. I will show you later in a demo. So you need that read-write username and put it here. Do basic authentication with the password that you put here. If you're not planning on doing posts, so not planning on changing information in WatchGuard Cloud, I would advise you to only use the read-only username and password to not make any mistakes. Step 2, you need to add the API key here in the WatchGuard API key field. I will show you also to use the API and then change any parameter that you want, basically. And when you send that, then you will receive in step 3 a bearer token. That token, it will be here in the field access token. That bearer token should be included in any subsequent request you make to the API. Basically, that replaces putting always your username and password in the API. I already created an environment in Postman and put all those in variables, so for security reasons as well as ease of use. So let's put that in practice. I will stop sharing my screen and switch to Postman. Just give me a second here. This is Postman. This is an application that a lot of developers in the world use to test out APIs specifically. So it's not only for the WatchGuard API, but I use this because it's easy. It also enables you to generate code. If you're not really a developer, then you can make your life easy. It works with environments and settings, but I will not be covering Postman totally. Just a demo of how you can use it for the WatchGuard API. So let's go ahead. This is an empty workspace, and I will import a file. Basically, the authorization API. And as you can see, there's a method already defined. It uses posts, and it will send that to OAuth token added to the URL. I will have to switch my environment here. Wait a second. Yeah, but basically I could show you so as this. So we need basic authentication, the username and password. In the headers, you need to add WatchGuard API key. And the documentation also mentions that you do a grant type of client credentials, a scope of API access. And this is the audience parameter I talked about if you want to use your API token on a delegated account or another managed account or a subscriber. Let me switch my workspace where I filled everything in. So this has an environment where all the variables are filled in from our Lunch and Learn account in WatchGuard Cloud. So if I send this request, you will see this is the access token I was talking about. Let us now use it to, for example, list all our managed accounts. Parameters in this API are, like I said, the type of account. You can choose to return all, only subscribers, or only service provider accounts. You can sort by name, by any field that you get, and also request the first 25, for example, which I did this in this case. And then I included the delegated accounts. That's a parameter for this WatchGuard Cloud account. If I send this data, then this is the JSON that is returned, basically all the accounts in your WatchGuard Cloud account. Okay, you can also get a list of this is allocated. There's another one. A list of incidents, for example, using the ThreatSync, API. I sort on date, descending. I take the first 10. Basically, it's always the same thing. You need your authorization, which I inherit from this token. WatchGuard API header key, some parameters that you can define, and the WatchGuard Cloud account on which you want to query. And in this case, for threads, I get all threads, all first 10 thread syncs in our account. This API shows more fields than you can access in WatchGuard Cloud. So that's one advantage in using the API. Basically, you see it was a hacking tool being run, Mimikat. Sorry for that. On this date, on this machine, and it was from the endpoint. We can, for example, also, I talked about blocked sites, so you can easily get a list of all blocked sites currently in the account. We see in that case, it's an IP address, it's a bogus IP address, but doesn't matter, a description, and all those information that you can create a block site. That block site is applied to whatever account you apply it to, but also any device beneath it. If you can also create a block site using the API. In that case, we do a post. Again, it's a URL with some parameters, including your authorization header and the WatchGuard API key. In this case, we have to supply a body. This body is also supplied in JSON type. So I'm going to add an IPv4 host. Let me change this in something test file person in a demo action block. If successful, it will return you what it did. So it's returning on this account. I did a block for that IP with this description, this ID. Normally, it also says the author username, but I can see it's not filled in right now. And to check that it's done, I can use the other API and do a request, and it should be at the bottom. Test via Postman in demo. There you go. Other things that you can do with the allocation API is to get, for example, how many fireboxes are allocated to an account. In this case, it will be on our account also. I use the type firebox. You can use, there's always descriptions here in the assets, but normally it should show outpoint as well. And if I do send, you will get that data, all the accounts, and I can see there are 2 fireboxes in our customer with EPDR. Let me switch. How do you use that in practice? I'm not sure what's going on here. Window, yep. Yeah, I'm sorry, I need to switch screens to Visual Studio. This is a real world example. Basically, this is C# code. I've put all my variables in a separate config file for security reasons, of course, because if you have the read-write access ID and password, you can change things on any other account. I use the HTTP client to get my API access bearer token, the same way I do it in Postman. I will get a response with the access token, and in this case, I will use the accounts API to create an account, namely created with C#. I can use any other name, but those are the body parameters that you saw in the block site example that I added in JSON type. This is the same, but for another API, the account API. And if I run that small C# program, if everything goes good, there you go. And then let me show you that in WatchGuard Cloud. So sending this push, as you see, you can do with APIs as well. Very interesting. I used it in the past to protect data. And if I go to WatchGuard Cloud, you can see created with C# account. So it works. Another example I prepared for you is Grafana. This is a dashboard application. Can you see my screen here? I hope so, yes. So in this case, I used the endpoint API of WatchGuard to from this customer with EPDR, the same one as we saw the threat sync information. This is a list of all the threats. I think it's 5 and higher that I listed here. And I also listed all the workstations that have an endpoint installed on it. So that's basically an example of what you can do with the WatchGuard API without much developer background, because basically this is doing queries and then showing the data structured in a visualization, as it is called in Grafana. To show you that I basically use the WatchGuard APIs, here you have the URL. In this case, threat score was higher than 5. The fields that are returned that I want to show in my table here, and the parameters should be here, the headers, so also always the WatchGuard API key and the bearer token that we generated in the authentication requests. Let me return to my slides. So I think we all covered this. So that concludes my demos. So the key takeaway from this, from using the WatchGuard API, is I think it's a powerful addition to integrate any WatchGuard solution with your existing systems, namely WatchGuard Cloud. You can automate tasks. Suppose you need to create 500 accounts in one day. By doing it manually, you will save a lot of time using the API. You can generate custom reports in more detail or your format of choice if it's not PDF that you get from WatchGuard Cloud. More details that are not displayed in the GUI. This is frequently. And you could use it as an additional sales point to your end customers and partners. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this session. Thank you very much for your attention. If there are any questions, I will try and answer them now.
Yes, Fenya, maybe you can open the audio of the people. So if somebody has a question, you can ask it right away. Or somebody has a remark.
Yes, I see we already got a question in the chat.
Mhm.
I don't know if you could read it.
No,
That's a good question. Is the API only for cloud managed fireboxes? No, but your firebox needs to be registered in WatchGuard Cloud, at least for cloud visibility. I don't know who's that noise in the background. Did you hear my response? Is that an answer to your question, Jonas? Okay, thank you. Any others?
So yeah, as long as your device is added to WatchGuard Cloud for logging and visibility, you can use the APIs. But it is needed to add it to WatchGuard Cloud because otherwise there's no interaction with the Firebox. Can you create policy rules? At the
Good
moment,
question.
for cloud managed firewalls, I don't think so that it is possible. I will write down the question and come back to that one.
It is not included in the Firebox management API of WatchGuard at the moment, but I suspect that will be coming in the future. Currently, this is a bit restricted to blocked site exceptions. I hope that covers your question.
Any other questions? We are also going to send the recording once again to everyone. So if there are questions afterwards, feel free to send us an email, of course.
Okay. Well, I know there's some people from CAPS in the audience. They used the APIs recently to bulk import some customers into their WatchGuard Cloud account. So it can help you creating, like Walter showed. At the moment that the run is API, it did not, Walter, you did not share your WatchGuard Cloud screen. It opened another window so the people could not see it. Maybe we can show that right now.
I will try.
Yes. So during
that.
Yeah, there's another screen because you shared only your WatchGuard Cloud screen, but once logged in, it opens another one. So if you could bring that one back. So that shows the power on the creation of subscribers in your account. If you need to onboard several tens or hundreds, then it's a convenient way to create them without having to do manually add subscriber and do the whole process. So that was an example of one of our resellers using the API in practice. Okay, Walter, you can. Hope you're ready to show it.
One moment. I need to log into the account again.
So the other example Walter showed is around XDR. So ThreatSync, you all know ThreatSync is the name of the XDR system of WatchGuard. You could create, do an API pull of all your incidents with a score higher than 7, for instance, and then create maybe a ticket in your own ticketing system. So you can focus on these events. That's another example. Okay,
does everybody see my screen right now?
Yes, yeah, that's better.
So this is the account that my C# program created.
Okay.
With the information I provided in JSON.
Okay, very nice. Well, if nobody else has a question, I see no questions in the chat right now. Then we can end the webinar maybe. There will be a new session, probably a live session, an on-site, I mean, by the end of April. We don't know the exact date yet, but you're all invited to that session also. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you, Walter, for making this clear to everybody.
Of course.
Thank you, Fania, for hosting it, and have a nice day. See you
Have a
later
nice
in
day.
another session.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.